Okay. If you do have your books handy, page 60, I know you guys worked on that assignment last week, but we talk about different types of powers. So, guys, we are going to finish the notes by Wednesday. So, there will be a test on next Tuesday. Okay, you're off Thursday and Friday. There will be a test Tuesday. Okay. Now, the last couple things we got to talk about. One, federalism. So we talked about the Federalist Paper. We have a new constitution creating a federal system. We need to talk about this. And then we're going to also talk about checks and balances at the end. And then we're done. Okay. That'll take me about 3 days to do. Okay. So remember this. Federalism, or a federal system. National, state, local, the boxes are roughly the same size here. Okay. And so on your homework assignment, you had inherent powers. Okay, and they list those on page 60. Okay, so these are things that naturally belong to any sovereign government. So as you guys sit there, you're blinking, and you don't even have to think about it. Now you're thinking about it. You're breathing, and you don't even have to think about it. It's inherent. Now you're thinking about it. Okay, so that's, things like controlling the border, acquiring territory. That's all governments have. They're inherent, born with it. Okay? Then you have the Constitution. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 grants certain powers to the national government. So those are express powers. They're specifically written in the Constitution. I just listed a couple here. They can coin money. They can declare war, establish post offices and postal roads. Okay, which grants them quite a bit of authority there. Okay, those powers that are not listed to the national government are reserved to the states or to the people, local governments. Okay, so if it's not denied, because some powers are denied to the states in the Constitution as well. Okay, now which amendment discusses this reserved powers thing? The 10th Amendment. Okay. Yeah, you need to know that. Okay, so this is kind of just what we're going to talk about today. All right, now, like recently, I'm going to put up some of my regular notes from my regular class. I do a whole chapter on federalism and regular government. Okay, I'm going to do a whole chapter with you in 2 days over federalism. So when I put these notes up, do not try and write them all down. I will tell you what to write down. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to put some notes up here. You guys are copying this down. This was just kind of to help frame this lecture for you. Okay, this right here. Just kind of frame where we are. Okay. Hi.
Can you read that last text?
Establish post offices, postal roads.
Okay.
On page 60, they list a bunch of those, and then there's implied powers. Oh my gosh. Implied powers. That's the one. Okay, that's the elastic clause. Okay. Were you guys able to find some of this stuff? You able to answer those 15? On page 61, that was your homework. What?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you guys were doing on Thursday and Friday?
Yeah.
With Miss Heimerman? Is that her name? Ruth?
Yeah.
Well, she wrote it on here, but I don't. Looks like Heimerman. But I don't know.
She goes by Ruth.
Heimerman.
Ruth's definitely her first name.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So, you'll put some notes up. Tell you what to write down, okay? Now, go away. So if you're taking notes, you can write federalism at the top, okay? Should be taking notes. So I think I mentioned this in this class, this idea of subsidiarity of the Catholic Church, okay? So in a perfect world, our government would work like that. I mean, that's how federalism is supposed to work. So the people that are closest to the problem deal with the problem. Talk about things like education, local police force, homeless problem, okay? Our homeless problem is different than other places. So deal with it there. It's not a one-size-fits-all national policy, okay? So that's the idea, okay? You don't have to write this down, okay? So in the 20th century, remember, some of the biggest fights we have in this country are over who gets to decide. So when we talk about abortion, like this is a topic in this election, right? And so Trump likes to say that, well, listen, we return that to the states. It's not a federal decision anymore. It's where it's supposed to be with the states. And then the voters in the states can vote on what kind of restrictions or that they want or don't want on abortion. Same thing with the death penalty. Okay, so this is a tug of war. Sometimes it's cooperation. Sometimes it's a tug of war. Does that make sense? So let me look at some kind of cooperative things here. Cooperative federalism is kind of what you call it. So the federal government's increased its influence over the states really since the 1970s, guys, okay? And I'm going to really explain this to you well, okay? So you don't have to write this down. But the FBI, you guys remember BTK, right? So the FBI helping local police and state police trying to find a serial killer. Okay? Any of you guys seen the Netflix show Mindhunter? Mindhunter? Did you watch that? Waiting for season 3 to drop, like it's been forever. It's actually a really good show. It's about the development of the FBI's behavioral science department, where they do profiling serial killers, okay? And usually, you know, if you have a serial killer, first of all, he looks like me, okay? It's a white guy somewhere in his mid-age. You know, that's your serial killer profile for most serial killers. Okay? It's a white guy, okay? 20 to 30, 30 to 50, somewhere in there. You know what I mean? So the FBI helping state and local law enforcement and vice versa, guys. Local and state police can help the federal government with investigations as well, okay? You saw a lot of that, like with the Trump assassination attempt. Okay, local police were there. Okay, the problem was what they found out is that the communication between the Secret Service, which is federal, and the local police was not there. I mean, somebody dropped the ball big time. I mean, why was somebody not on that roof? That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So apparently the Secret Service told the local police, we need to have somebody on that roof. But they didn't, you know, they didn't carry it out. So, you guys are familiar with the National Guard? Okay, so the federal government, if you join the National Guard or the reserves, federal government trains you. So you go to basic training for, I don't know, 6 weeks, okay? And then once you make it through basic, you got to do 2 weeks in the summer and 1 weekend a month. You're what we refer to oftentimes as a citizen soldier, okay? A weekend warrior, that sort of thing, okay? So the Kansas National Guard can be used by the governor of Kansas. Say there's a big tornado. Governor Kelly can call out the National Guard to help. Who funds the National Guard and trains the National Guard? The federal government does. Okay, but the states have access to them. So that's your cooperative federalism. Okay, I think most people are good with all of what I just said. Okay, now things are going to begin to change in the 1970s. I want you to write this down. Revenue share. Federal tax dollars shared with local and state governments. Now, this term revenue sharing has multiple uses. Some of you may go to work for a corporation that is, say, a publicly traded corporation. And oftentimes they'll offer their employees stock options where you can buy the company that you work for, their stock at a lower price than the general public. Okay, so immediately after you say that, say you're working for Boeing, stock selling for $50 a share, and they offer to their employees at $30 a share, every share you just bought, you made $20 on immediately. Okay? Now, oftentimes they'll say, well, you can't sell that for 5 years or something like that. Okay? Because you can't just turn around and make profits on it. You know what I mean? So revenue sharing is something Coke Industries does as well. So if you do a good job and you help the company make money, you get a bonus. You made money for the company, we're going to reward you with some revenue share. Okay? So that's something that's got a good vibe to it in the workplace. Okay? This vibe here feels pretty good as well, where the federal government says, now, remember the 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment. Income tax. So the federal government now has a direct relationship with you. And they're going to tax your money, and that money's going to go to Washington, D.C. Yes? That money originates in the state of Kansas with you. Goes to D.C. And then the federal government says to the states, hey, we have some extra tax dollars left over. We're going to send it back to you, to the states. This is revenue share. You guys with me? Now, I'm going to use an analogy here. It's a little bit of a crazy analogy, but stick with me. It'll make sense when I'm done. I want you to think of this revenue sharing. These tax dollars that originate in Kansas come back to Kansas because the federal government's doing us a favor. They're giving us money. I want you to think of this money, this revenue sharing, as crack. Crack is a drug. Crack kills. Don't do crack. Public service announcement from the 1980s. Okay? That was on TV. That's what they said. Crack is a drug. Crack kills. Don't do crack. But you know what? People take crack because it makes them feel good. Okay? So I'm just going to give everybody in here a little rock of crack. Okay? And everybody's going to smoke it. And they're going like, wow, that was nice. That felt good. Can I get some more, please? So what are you going to do with this money? What is the state of Kansas? And guys, there's no strings attached to this money. Like, here, have some money. Spend it on whatever you want. Now, let's look at the budget of the state of Kansas. What are the two biggest expenditures for the state of Kansas? What? Schools and roads. That's where 85% of the budget for the state of Kansas goes. Medicare's expense, Medicaid is expenses, which is help funded by the state as well. Okay? So, they're going to give us some money. What are we going to spend it on? Well, let's say we want to hire some more cops or more teachers. Reduce class size. Let's spend that money on hiring, 50 new teachers in the state of Kansas. Okay? All right, great. Got smaller class sizes, good for your kids. Yay! That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, what happens when next year rolls around and you got to pay those 50 teachers again? And they get a raise. Where are you going to get the money to pay them? Daddy. Okay? They're getting you hooked. Okay? This is like crack. They're going to get you hooked. They're going to give you this money, no strings attached. Now, what the crack dealer does is he says, listen, I know you want some more. And I'm going to give you some more. But in order to get it, you got to do this for me. And then I'll give you some more crack. So the federal government says to the states, now that they get them hooked, we're going to tell you where to spend this money. There's going to be strings attached to it. Not only that, as I go through the slides here, guys, they're going to tell the states, in order to get this money, you're going to have to spend some of your own money on it as well. So we're going to choose where this money is going to go, and then you're going to have to allocate money from your state budget to go towards this as well. So now they're controlling what the state is spending money. Sounds nefarious. Okay, let's get into this. So, guys, now, did we actually have extra money in the 70s? Or did they just print it and send it to the states? Oh, yeah. Guys, our national debt in the 1970s was under $2 trillion. It's now 35. So watch. You don't have to write this down, but you had a great deal of freedom on where you spent this money. But there was pressure to cut federal spending because we were starting to increase the debt. And they're like, the federal government's spending too much money. Now the states have already gotten a taste of this free money. And some of them need it to continue to fund what they're doing right now. So even though there was pressure to cut government spending, they didn't. They just changed the name and called it something else. So we're going to go from revenue sharing to what are called federal grants. Okay? So again, you don't have to write all this down, but what you should write down is we changed from revenue sharing to federal grants. Okay? So there was pressure, but nah, the spending has actually grown. And there's going to be strings attached to that money. So, any of you guys filled out your FAFSA yet? Okay. You get anything? You know you're going to get some help? Yeah. You got a bunch of kids in your family? 3? Anybody else fill out FAFSA yet? Like, with Lily and Jack, they're like, you need to fill out your FAFSA. And I'm like, dude, we're not getting any money. My wife makes too much. We're not getting any federal grants for my kid to go to college. Okay? That's for people that need it. So, like, if you come from a poorer family and you're a good student, you want to go to college, and you apply for grants, there's money available. That's what this is, federal grants. Okay? To help people that are bright go to college. Well, I guess you really don't even have to be that bright, do you? Go to college. Do you? No, you don't. I mean, I've had some students, I've had some former baseball players, and like, this kid's telling me he's going to K-State, and I'm like, what the hell? What's your GPA, dude? He didn't finish. I think he one and done. Okay. That's okay. It's not, but really, that probably had no business going there. He had a good time while he was there. I'm sure. Okay. But that's not going to be you guys, right? No. We're going there to get stuff done. Yeah. Okay. So, government grants. Did I skip that? I think I skipped that. Okay. Write this down. Block grants. We're going to change the name. We're going to look at a couple different types of federal grants that we see today. Now, states tend to like these grants because they give you a little bit more economic freedom. So when you think block, B, block, B, broad. Okay? So, public transportation. Federal government says, here's some money for transportation. You guys might remember something called the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay. Federal government's going to print $1 trillion and send it to the states. Now, a lot of that's going to be allocated for things like bridges, roads. Pretty much your entire life, guys, there's been road construction on Kellogg. Ever since I've lived in Kansas, there's been road construction on Kellogg. You know, Kellogg used to be like 21st Street. Just a bunch of red lights going across town. Yeah, when your parents were born, that's what it was like. It never ends. Now that interchange they're doing northeast is nice for us east siders going west. So what does public transportation mean? Could that be airports? Could that be roads? Railroads? City buses? Bridges? Could be a lot of different things. Now, Kansas may have different needs than Rhode Island when it comes to public transportation, than New York. The East Coast, they use trains more than we do. And we have trains. We generally don't use them for people. Okay? I mean, there's Amtrak that runs through what, Newton? You guys ever been on Amtrak? Go up to Newton at 3 o'clock in the morning, catch the train to Chicago, goes out to the West Coast. You've done that?
It's like for vacation.
Yeah. How old were you? It was fun. No? What wasn't fun about it? You didn't have an iPad or anything?
I mean, I did, but I didn't. I only had.
Because that's what you were doing anyway.
I only had Wi-Fi on it. And it was like no Wi-Fi.
That's horrible. What a horrible situation to be in for a fifth grader. And they have cars that you can go in and they're open and you can like see out, you know, as you're going towards through the Rockies and stuff.
Yeah, but you get.
Yeah, because you don't look out the window when you're driving. You look at your phone.
When you're driving.
You're driving.
What?
I'm on my phone when I'm driving.
Stop it.
I'm actually watching your lectures.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys are going to get somebody killed on your phones. Stay off your phones when you're driving. All right. Health, welfare, education. That's broad. You guys understand that? States like these. Now, Kansas has an income tax. Yes? So you're going to pay somewhere between 4 and 6% of your income in the state of Kansas. Okay, depending on how much you make. Okay? That's not a ton of money for Kansas. So the federal government taxes you more at 20% to 36%. So they get more cash. Okay? So you can see what's happening here. The federal government is printing money, not actually sending back our tax dollars. You're just printing money to do this. Okay? So let me show you some graphs. This one here starts in 1940. Okay? Now, my history students, you remember the New Deal and the first time the government gave direct assistance to individuals. Remember this? Okay. So that's here. That's that little blue line. Now the red line here is health programs. What is created in 1964? Health program. What? Somebody said it. Medicare. You guys heard of Medicare? We talked about Medicare. It started in 1964. So this is federal funding to the states to run Medicare. and then Medicaid, okay? The blue here is non-health programs. So you get into the 70s, guys, you start to see all these revenue sharing and now block grants, and then we're going to talk about categorical grants, okay? And you see this rise. Now, in the 80s, when Reagan came in, Reagan said, hey, we're sending too much money to the states. What are we doing here? We're going into debt. I need to spend that money on the military. That's what Reagan said. We need to defeat the Soviet Union. So we're going to outspend them. Military, that's not state funding, guys. That's just funding the military. Building more aircraft carriers. Building more nuclear missiles. Building more defense. Okay? So he cut that, okay, and returned some of those responsibilities to the states. Then you get to Bill Clinton in 92, and here we go. We haven't looked back. This is Obamacare right here, 2009. Okay, goes straight up, funding to the states because the federal government's funding it. Okay, with our tax dollars, or actually with money they print. You guys understand what I'm saying? All of this coincides with the huge rise in national debt. Yeah, so look at this one. Now this goes back to 1981, okay? About the time we were starting to 2007. This gray is agriculture, so we talked about Farm Bill. How much subsidies we do for the farmers. Definitely talked about that in history class, right? And then this is housing and urban development. You've got other aid, transportation. Look at how much money the states get from the federal government for transportation. Now, a lot of this will coincide with the change in the drinking age. So the federal government said to the states, if you don't change your drinking age to 21, you're not going to get federal transportation dollars. Okay? All this road work we see around here, guys, most of that money comes from the federal government. It doesn't come from the state or local taxes. So you can see a huge rise here in spending to the states. Now, this is the scary part here. All right, so Kansas, we have state income taxes. So this is an average of the 50 states about where we get all the money we need to function as a state. Fund our schools, build our roads, fix our bridges, and then everything else. So about 36% of that comes from tax revenue. Now, obviously, guys, Tennessee, Texas, Florida do not have state income taxes. Okay, so they're not getting, now they have property taxes, and then they have other funding mechanisms. We have some other funds. When you drive on the toll road, you guys use, yeah, I mean, dude, I use it a lot. And so I pay for that. So the state gets money for that. You guys, they have fishing licenses, hunting licenses, okay? Other types of taxes, sales taxes, and so forth, okay? So these are other funds. But on average, the states today, 34% of all the money that the state of Kansas spends comes from the federal government. 34%. So what started with a piece of crack, here, try this, is now full-blown dependency on the federal government. If Donald Trump was elected and said, okay, we're returning all this to the states, it's your job. We're not going to send any money for it. Yeah, we're in trouble. The states are in trouble. They need that money. Okay? So more and more decisions are being made by the federal government over our own budgets and over our own lives, over our state and local governments. Okay? So these grants and aid, you don't have to write that down. Look at this. Yeah. So this is 1960. This is 2017. Okay? What started with $45 billion from the federal government to the states by 2011 was $514 billion. Payments for individuals, this is kind of your welfare, Medicaid, Medicare type stuff. Capital investment, that's your transportation stuff. And then remainder in here for different types of grants. That could be educational grants, all different kinds of stuff. There's another graph, 1977, 2006. I got lots of graphs. You don't have to write this down. Okay, now, so this type of helping the states is not new. We can go back in history and look at some of this. Okay, so grants, like the Land Ordinance of 1785. So when its territory became a state, like Kansas did, which is after 1785, certain plots of land are set aside for schools later on. So if you look over where Northwest is, big plot of land that was set aside for a school. Wilbur, big plot of land set aside for a school. Okay. The Morrill Act, and I don't know if Mr. Jacks taught you this last year or the other teachers. The Morrill Act in 1862 established A&M universities. A&M. What does that stand for? Agriculture and what? Not manufacturing. Agriculture and say it. Mechanics, which is what? Engineering. What is K-State known for? And engineering. Okay, KU is not known for engineering. They're known for what? Medical. Do they have engineering? Yes, they have it. But K-State engineering program might be better. I don't know. You guys remember Dustin from last year? Stevenson? Okay, he visited both engineering schools. He said KU has more modern stuff, but K-State program's better. There's some more modern labs and stuff like that. Okay. Because I know all of you guys are thinking about engineering, right? Okay. All right. So these are things that traditionally we've seen the federal government help the states with somewhat. Okay. I mean, prior to the New Deal and the Depression, guys, there wasn't a lot of this. So I just had up on the board postal roads. So they can build post offices and postal roads. So that gave the federal government some ability to build roads in the states, okay, because that's in the Constitution. All right, write this down. Categorical grants. These are more specific than block grants. Examples. Instead of public transportation, the federal government sends you a grant for your airports in your state. Unemployment compensation. Fighting crime. Now that can be a little bit broad. A natural disaster. So with the two hurricanes that recently hit the United States, states like North Carolina are having a really tough time. Do you ever hear on the news that they have declared it a natural disaster? That means that state, those local communities are eligible for categorical grants, okay, to help them recover. Most recently in Kansas, the Greensburg tornado, which if you saw the aftermath of that, it's pretty shocking. Natural disaster was called, and Greensburg received some federal funding for that, categorical grants. All right. We have 50 states. We have 340 million people. We pay taxes. One of our neighbors has suffered greatly from a natural disaster. We're going to pool our resources together and send them some help. What a categorical grant for national disaster aid does. Okay. Now, as far as airports go, you guys know we kind of redid our airport recently. Did you know that? It wasn't always called Eisenhower Airport. What was it called? Oh, wow. You probably drove by that sign a million times when you were a kid, but your head was in your phone instead of looking out the window. Mid-Continent Airport. Does that ring a bell? Dude, it's only been Eisenhower Airport in like 5 years.
Did that for
No.
my entire life.
No, it has
Yeah,
not.
It's been forever.
No way.
I know it's a national airport.
When
not in-
did Mid-Continent Airport switch to Eisenhower Airport? 2014. You were 8.
That's 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
It probably took at least till 2016 to get all the signage changed. Now, did we pay for that? Where did that money come from to like redo that? It's a lot nicer, guys, than it was. The taxpayers of California, Texas, and Florida paid more for that than we did. Because they pay more in taxes than we do. Yes? Into the pie? Actually, you know what happened? The government just printed more money because we didn't actually have extra money. They just printed it and we ran up the national debt. That's what happened. Now, our airport's kind of nice. The small airports go. Yes. Yeah, then we'd be $70 trillion. What? Well, that's what we do. That's why we have so much debt.
Started go-
We owe it to ourselves. Most of it. Yes, it is.
So, like, who would know? Yeah, can we just ask?
Well, isn't there like a?
Just like, would you like president? I'm just gonna.
Real quick. The last chart I talked about with how much people get, how much states get from the federal government. This is an updated one. This is 2020. So it was 34%. Now it's close to 36%. Okay. When did this start? Way back here with some crack. Okay. Less than 25%. So you can see a huge increase here in dependency that the states have on the federal government. Yes? We will continue to talk about this relationship between the states and the national government tomorrow. Carly, I hope you feel better.
Don't watch it while driving.